Just 5 minutes ago, an earth-shattering confession shattered years of royal protocol and plunged the monarchy into turmoil. King Charles, with trembling hands and glassy eyes, revealed a truth so carefully hidden it left Prince William in silent disbelief. The Queen's will had a secret clause, and it didn't name Charles, William, or Camilla. It named a child the next generation, George. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began in the heart of Windsor, during what was meant to be a routine royal strategy session, another closed-door meeting between father and son, framed by tradition, duty, and silence. But this time, Charles broke that silence. With only a few senior aides in the next room and Princess Anne notably absent, the king chose that moment to unburden himself. The air thickened as Charles revealed the Queen had left behind a sealed, personally dictated codicil to her will. Within it, one name was circled with unmistakable clarity: George. Not as an heir, but as the sole inheritor of Balmoral, the royal family's most sacred sanctuary. William, at first confused, asked again. And that's when Charles uttered it: "It's not yours. It was never meant for me. Balmoral belongs to George now." The silence that followed was heavier than any coronation crown. William, long conditioned to maintain composure, could barely mask the collapse in his expression. His eyes dropped, jaw clenched. The man who had walked through decades of media scrutiny, personal tragedy, and institutional weight suddenly looked like a son, not an heir. For him, Balmoral wasn't just a property. It was childhood. It was summers with his grandmother. It was peace. And now, without warning, it had been handed over to his own son, bypassing him entirely. It wasn't about the land, it was about the message that his monarch had chosen to skip a generation in trust. It felt like doubt wrapped in velvet. Was this a vote of no confidence? The room grew cold as Charles continued. The Queen had made the decision alone, long before her passing, and had shared it only with her most trusted Princess Anne. The will, according to Charles, was delivered to him sealed and accompanied by a private note. "Do not question this. Balmoral is his. No reasoning, no apology, only resolve." The mention of a sanctuary clause sent tremors through William. It was a term he had only ever heard whispered in private royal briefings, an ancient principle referring to a property held outside the sovereign's command, preserved for the moral centre of the monarchy. Behind the Queen's decision loomed her last visit to Balmoral, a mysterious and unusually private trip, just months before her death. She had gone alone, stayed longer than usual, and refused media access. At the time, many chalked it up to nostalgia. Now it appears it was something far more deliberate. Some staff later whispered she had invited no aides inside for 3 days. Only Princess Anne came and went. Something was happening there. Something meant to shape the future. And now, with this confession, the scale of it began to unfold, not in grandeur, but in betrayal. Questions piled up like storm clouds. Why George? Why now? And most of all, why keep William in the dark? Charles had no answers, or perhaps he did, and simply couldn't speak them. All that remained was the fallout, a father who'd been passed over, a son suddenly burdened with a legacy he didn't know he owned, and a monarchy shaken at its very core. But to understand why George was chosen and why William was blindsided, we must go back to the Queen's final days, where secrets were sealed behind Balmoral's stone walls. Balmoral had always been more than a royal estate. It was Queen Elizabeth's personal haven, where truths were whispered and bloodlines were examined. But in the final summer of her reign, subtle shifts in tradition, whispers among staff, and one unusual visitor, Prince George, hinted at something no one dared speak aloud. It began with a break in custom, so discreet, most would have overlooked it. Prince George, just a child in the eyes of the public, was invited alone to spend 2 full days with his great-grandmother at Balmoral. No security detail beyond the basics, no parents, no formal schedule, only a grandmother and a great-grandson tucked away from the world. Senior staff later admitted they'd never seen such a private visit extended to someone so young. The Queen had cleared her calendar, dismissed all but her most trusted attendants, and asked for the estate to be silent. What took place inside those stone walls is still a matter of whispers, but one footman claimed she told him, "I am preparing something George will understand in time." It was not a throwaway line, it was a warning, or perhaps a prophecy. After George's visit ended, the Queen was different. Withdrawn, focused and disturbingly quiet. She spent long hours sealed inside the Balmoral library, poring over records no one else had touched in decades, documents tied to legacy, succession and private family covenants. She refused aid's help, declining even the presence of longtime secretaries. One evening, the castle's cleaner found a piece of parchment in her sitting room, bearing her unmistakable script. It read simply, "Legacy must begin again, without stain, without fear." Though the letter was quickly secured by palace officials, its contents have haunted those who glimpsed it. What deepened the mystery was the unannounced arrival of Princess Anne during that same week. There was no public engagement to justify it, no family gatherings scheduled, and no press coverage allowed. Anne's presence was hushed, and her departure even more so. Some say she entered the Queen's study and didn't emerge for nearly 6 hours. Others claim she brought with her a sealed leather folder, which she left in the Queen's possession. Whatever occurred between them was never discussed again. But from that point forward, Anne stood apart, more guarded, more determined, and notably distanced from Charles in the months that followed. Perhaps the most unsettling revelation came not from the palace, but from a clergyman who visited Balmoral days later to perform a private communion. He later confided, off the record, that the Queen spoke of the one who carries legacy without stain. When he asked if she meant William, her response was reportedly, "He has carried too much of theirs. The sanctuary must begin anew." And with those words, the narrative of succession took a turn the world was never meant to see. But even before that final summer, signs of the Queen's divergence from royal expectations were becoming impossible to ignore, especially during Charles's transition to king. From the moment Charles ascended the throne, something felt off. Balmoral, the cherished royal retreat, was absent from his first speech, excluded from early royal estate briefings, and eerily omitted from the new royal succession plans. Whispers in Parliament turned into suspicions at court. Had Balmoral been kept from him on purpose? In the days following the Queen's passing, Charles addressed the nation with customary grace, but to those listening closely, something was missing. While he spoke warmly of Windsor, Sandringham and Clarence House, there was no mention of Balmoral. Not a word, not a tribute, for a place so deeply tied to the monarchy's emotional heart. The silence was deafening. It wasn't just oversight, it was omission. The sort that wasn't accidental, it was calculated. Those close to the crown began to take notice. Royal insiders leaked fragments of internal communications, one of which referenced Balmoral as an inaccessible estate in an encrypted message between legal advisors just days before the king's coronation. A term like that doesn't appear lightly, especially when tied to property that once served as the Queen's emotional sanctuary. But the clues didn't end there. Behind closed palace doors, Camilla's frustration was boiling. According to one palace aide, she had been denied access to Balmoral without direct approval from Anne, an unprecedented restriction. Even as Queen Consort, her travel there was delayed, rescheduled, and in one case, outright blocked. For Charles, this became an open wound. He had assumed the mantle of king, but a piece of his mother's world, the most sacred piece, remained out of reach. His once close bond with Princess Anne began to show visible cracks. Tense exchanges behind glass doors, brief public appearances together where their words were fewer and colder than ever before. Something was unraveling between them, and it was clear the root of that unraveling had a name: Balmoral. William, watching from the sidelines, couldn't ignore the shift. His father's unease, the Queen's final silence, and now this unexplained detachment from Balmoral, all of it pointed to a hidden truth. Driven by instinct, William initiated a quiet inquiry. Not through public offices, but through his own network of estate caretakers, royal historians, and trusted palace staff. What began as curiosity evolved into suspicion. When a former royal legal aide warned him, the sanctuary wasn't just symbolic, it was sealed. Word again, sanctuary. It had crept back into conversation like a ghost from another age. Soon after, William came across a classified internal document marked for sovereign eyes only. Its contents were redacted, but the header sent a jolt down his spine. Balmoral Clause, Sanctuary Designation. The silence around Balmoral was no longer avoidable. It wasn't grief or royal protocol, it was orchestration. Something his grandmother had set in motion long before her death. Something his father had kept hidden out of fear or shame. Whatever was buried beneath Balmoral wasn't just tradition, it was a transfer of power, one that bypassed the current king entirely. And as William began digging, what he uncovered through palace informants and estate guardians sent a chill down his spine. Determined to protect his son's future, William went rogue. Without telling Charles, he initiated his own probe into Balmoral's legal holdings, reaching out to retired staff, personal legal aides of the Queen, and even Princess Alexandra. What he found buried in a sealed envelope, marked for George's time, changed everything. He started quietly, methodically, under the radar of Buckingham's watchful eyes. His first move was contacting the Queen's former personal solicitor, a man long since retired but still bound by a loyalty that transcended titles. The meeting took place in a secluded countryside estate, far from the eyes of media or monarchy. There, over tea laced with caution, the man admitted that shortly before the Queen's final visit to Balmoral, he was summoned for an unusual request: to oversee a last-minute trustee shift of an undisclosed asset. No explanation, just a firm directive signed by the Queen herself and countersigned by Princess Anne. The document was sealed, never entered into the main estate files, and stored in what he called a legacy chamber, a vault built not for property, but for prophecy. William's second discovery came through an aging accountant who once managed minor royal estate finances. She still kept the ledgers. One entry stood out: trust amended, effective upon sovereign's passing. Beneficiary GACW George Alexander Louis of Cambridge, Windsor. The initials alone sent a chill through William's body. This wasn't symbolic, this wasn't a passing mention in a letter. This was a calculated, legal maneuver, one that ensured Balmoral would bypass Charles and himself entirely. When he pressed for where the original directive had gone, the answer was colder than expected. We were told it would reveal itself when the time was right. That revelation came in the form of a sealed envelope delivered in secret to Kensington Palace. Slipped into William's personal mail with no return address, the handwriting was unmistakable Queen Elizabeth's. The seal, unbroken. The envelope read only, for George's time. William didn't open it. Not then. He couldn't. The weight of it was too heavy, too sacred. Instead, he turned to one person he believed might hold a piece of the code: Princess Alexandra. She had always lingered at the edges of royal drama, rarely spoken but always present. When he asked her directly what she knew about Balmoral, she replied with unsettling clarity, "Don't look for Balmoral in ink, look in loyalty." Those words stayed with him, gnawed at him. He began to question the very foundation of his role, not as a future king, but as a father. Was the crown something to preserve, or something to protect his son from? Had the Queen seen something in George, something pure, untainted by the institution's burdens? The conflict tore through him. Every answer he uncovered only deepened the void inside. The Queen hadn't left behind a mystery, she had left behind a message. One final piece emerged: an obscure letter, decades old, penned by Queen Mary and tucked within Windsor's historical archives. It read, "Balmoral is not where power lives. It is where power remembers who it was. It is the crown's quiet crucible." And suddenly William understood. This wasn't about bypassing Charles. It was about resetting something that had gone terribly wrong. But it wasn't until Charles was confronted by William in a private meeting that the dam of silence finally broke. No media cameras were rolling, no advisors in the room. It was father and son, heir and monarch. Charles stood before William and admitted what no king should: the Queen left Balmoral to George. "Not me, not you," she said. "He would be the one to restore its meaning." The words did not echo. They sank, heavy, irreversible. Charles did not speak like a sovereign delivering a decree. He spoke like a son still living in the shadow of a mother who had judged him silently. His voice carried something unfamiliar, regret edged with resignation. For a moment, the crown felt smaller than the confession. William stood still, every instinct trained to remain composed, yet inside something fractured. This was not about land. It was about faith, about being measured and found lacking. Charles continued, slower now, as if each sentence cost him pride. He admitted the clause had been added months before the Queen's passing, drafted privately, witnessed only by Anne. She didn't trust me with what Balmoral represented, he said quietly, and in that admission was decades of unspoken tension. Balmoral had never just been a residence. It was her refuge from politics, from scandal, from compromise. It symbolized constancy. And according to her final decision, Charles was not its guardian. George was. When Camilla learned of it days earlier, the palace walls reportedly trembled with anger. She had expected Balmoral to become a cornerstone of their reign, a continuation of prestige. Instead, she found herself shut out of a legacy she assumed was secure. Charles confessed he delayed telling William, fearing the revelation would distract him during a fragile transition. But the truth was simpler and more painful. He had hoped, somehow, that silence might dull the humiliation. It did not. And then there was Anne. Steady, immovable Anne. She had honored the Queen's decision without protest, without leak, without emotion. She had guarded the clause like a sentinel. Charles revealed that on the night the will was read, Anne had said only one sentence. Mother chose sanctuary over succession. No debate, no sympathy, just acceptance. In that acceptance was confirmation the decision had not been impulsive. It had been deliberate. William finally spoke, his voice calm, but carrying a depth that cut through the room. Then Balmoral belongs to a boy who doesn't even know he's been chosen. It was not accusation, it was sorrow. George was still young, still untouched by the machinery of monarchy. Yet now, without understanding it, he carried a responsibility older than any title. William felt pride and dread collide inside him. Pride that his son had been entrusted with something sacred. Dread that such trust implied failure in those who came before. Charles tried to frame it as hope, as renewal. He insisted the Queen believed George represented a reset, a cleansing of burdens that had accumulated through generations. But beneath that justification lingered a deeper truth. The monarchy was being quietly reshaped, not by proclamation, but by private will. A line had been drawn, and it skipped a king. The confession did not end the tension, it intensified it. The air between father and son remained charged, fragile. What had been spoken could never be unsaid. What had been revealed could never be contained. And as the weight of that reality settled in, another question began to rise, heavier than the last. But if George has been chosen, what exactly has he inherited, and why did the Queen hide it from the world? Balmoral isn't just a retreat, it's where monarchs are made and unmade. From Queen Victoria to Elizabeth II, Balmoral has held a spiritual grip on the monarchy. But now, buried in the Queen's private journals, a deeper purpose has emerged. Balmoral as the last remaining symbol of uncorrupted royal power, entrusted only to those deemed worthy. The truth lay not in policy, but in pages hidden deep within Queen Elizabeth's handwritten journals, kept locked away in a leather-bound chest, only to be opened upon her passing. In one chilling entry, she wrote, "He must protect the sanctuary, not wield it." Those words were not about Charles. They were not about William. They were about George. Balmoral, it turns out, was never meant to be governed. It was meant to govern the soul of the monarchy, a place not of rulership, but of reckoning. A place that chose its guardian, not through birthright, but through purity of spirit. For centuries, a legend has echoed through the walls of Balmoral, a secret oath, said to be taken only in the altar room, hidden beneath the estate's northern wing. Only heirs on the path to power have ever entered, and only a few have left changed. Queen Victoria, it's whispered, brought each of her successors there not for ceremony, but for judgment. It was her way of seeing what courtrooms and crowns could not, truth. Some passed, some did not. But what mattered wasn't just the test, it was what the estate revealed in silence. For Queen Elizabeth, Balmoral was more than history. It was healing. It was where she went to grieve her father, where she prepared for coronation, where she wept for Diana, and where, quietly, she sought to redeem what had been lost. After Diana's death, the Queen had returned there, alone, without press, for 6 nights. She never spoke of what she did during that time, but staff remember her spending hours near the riverbend Diana used to walk. From that moment on, she refused to allow any renovations near that area. And years later, when George first visited Balmoral, he ran to that very spot as if drawn by something older than memory. Perhaps that's what guided the Queen's decision. Perhaps she saw in George what had been missing in those before him, not entitlement, but innocence. For years, one wing of the estate remained locked, en touche D, guarded by an order from the Queen herself. No staff entered, no updates were made. What lies beyond that sealed corridor remains a secret, but some say it houses a vault, a repository of personal letters, relics, and ancestral truths, deemed too dangerous for the public eye. Even more uncanny is George's connection to Balmoral. From the moment he arrived as a toddler, there were signs. He knew paths before he was shown. He asked questions no one had prompted. And on one occasion, he told a footman he wanted to find the quiet room. A room only the Queen herself had ever entered without staff. Whether spiritual, symbolic, or something inexplicable, Balmoral had chosen its next keeper long before the papers were signed. As the world reels from this revelation, one question remains: how will this inheritance shape Prince George's destiny? He is just a boy, yet he now carries a weight that generations of monarchs couldn't hold. With Balmoral in his name and the Queen's will as his shield, Prince George is no longer just an heir. He is the keeper of something ancient, pure and powerful. But is the crown ready for a future shaped by a child? The irony is brutal. While the public gazes at George with innocent admiration, unaware of the storm brewing behind palace walls, the truth is far more complex. He doesn't yet know what Balmoral truly is. He doesn't yet understand the oath he's inherited. But deep within the royal corridors, the machinery has already begun moving. George is now the symbol of an unspoken divide, a future monarch, tasked not with ruling first, but with preserving something far more elusive: purity, legacy without corruption, sanctuary without conquest. And all this responsibility lies silently on the shoulders of a boy who still holds his father's hand in public. Behind closed doors, William and Catherine are now grappling with an impossible question. How do you prepare a child for a destiny that no adult has ever fulfilled? How do you raise a king who must protect what others have fought to possess? There are no blueprints, no training manuals, only instinct and a heavy dose of fear. William, torn between his role as father and future king, has already begun shifting his mindset. Every occasion now has to consider what Balmoral represents. Every lesson, every trip, every whisper George hears at night now carries the pressure of legacy. Catherine, ever poised, has reportedly taken on the spiritual weight of the matter, seeking guidance, not from courtiers, but from those who knew the Queen best. She believes, according to sources, that the Queen saw something divine in George, and it's now their responsibility to shield and nurture it. But not everyone agrees. Inside the royal council, tension festers. George's ownership of Balmoral has disrupted centuries-old lines of control. Questions are rising, quietly, dangerously. What happens when the crown and the sanctuary no longer belong to the same person? What if George, as a man, chooses the sanctuary over the throne? In emergency meetings, advisors debate whether protocols should be rewritten to ensure Balmoral is eventually absorbed back into sovereign estate control. But each time the issue is raised, one voice pushes back: Princess Anne's. She's already stepped in. She's already begun her subtle mentorship of George, outside cameras, outside protocol, just like the Queen once did with her. Anne has told insiders, the Queen knew what she was doing. We don't rewrite her will, we respect it. And yet, the royal divide is real. Camilla's allies view Balmoral as a threat, a splinter in the monarchy's otherwise seamless control. To them, it represents a ghost from a reign they believed ended with Elizabeth. But William and Catherine see something else: a new foundation, a new order, one that doesn't replace the crown but redefines it. and that redefinition begins with George. Some insiders have even whispered at Balmoral could become the seat of spiritual monarchy, while Buckingham remains the seat of political power. Two forces, one child, and a future already being written. But before the crown can stabilize, there's one more storm to come, and it lies hidden in the Queen's final letter, still unopened. Locked in a vault beneath Windsor, marked by the Queen's own seal, lies a final letter addressed to George and no one else. Insiders say it contains not only her blessing but a warning and an instruction that could fracture the monarchy or rebuild it from its core. This letter is not a myth. Its existence was confirmed by two senior palace archivists who were present the night the Queen's private documents were inventoried. Among the items was a single envelope, handwritten, thick with pages, and bearing a wax seal with her personal insignia, one not used since before her coronation. Filed under the code GACW, eyes only, it was immediately marked as restricted access until a future date yet to be disclosed. The instructions were clear. It is not to be opened until George reaches what the Queen termed the threshold of truth. But no one knows what that means. Not his parents, not the advisors, not even Charles. And that is what terrifies the institution most. Rumours about its contents have consumed palace corridors. One recurring whisper suggests the Queen's message to George is as emotional as it is disruptive, a plea not for obedience, but for independence. She urges him, they say, to lead without becoming them, a haunting echo of a lifetime watching her family torn between public image and private chaos. The Queen, always the steward of order, may have realised in George, the monarchy needed something else, renewal. Not through law, but through soul. Some believe the letter reveals a hidden truth about Balmoral itself, something deeper than sanctuary. Perhaps its original purpose wasn't just spiritual retreat, but a fail-safe, a place from which monarchic power could be restored if corrupted. One chilling quote, reportedly extracted from a duplicate note tucked away in her personal diary, reads, "Your reign begins not with a crown, but with a sanctuary." If that is true, then the Queen envisioned a new order, one where legitimacy comes not from coronation, but from character, from preserving what the rest of the crown has forgotten. Legal arguments have now taken root behind the scenes. When will George be considered old enough to read the letter? Does the sovereign's current legal authority, meaning Charles, have the right to override its restrictions? One legal advisor quietly admitted, "We're not just talking about a letter, we're talking about instructions that could upend constitutional expectation." And so the envelope remains untouched, wrapped in velvet, sealed away in a chamber few can even access. Yet its presence is felt like a ticking clock. And now, as George grows older and the crown teeters between past and future, the tension thickens. The Queen's silence has become a roar in the minds of those closest to the throne. What she wrote may challenge everything they've built, or it may save it from collapse. And as that letter awaits its destined reader, one truth echoes through the palace halls. Power doesn't always pass through scepters or ceremonies. Sometimes it's handed down in whispers, hidden wills and guarded sanctuaries. And now, with the Queen's final move, the heart of the monarchy beats not in the king's throne, but in the hands of a future king still finding his voice. Something irreversible has shifted in the monarchy's centre of gravity. The revelation surrounding Balmoral did more than spark palace intrigue. It redrew the internal map of power. No longer does everything flow downward from the sovereign. Now, a new axis has formed, pulling focus toward the boy who never asked for this role, yet was chosen to carry it. For centuries, tradition dictated the crown's passage. Now, a hidden clause in a queen's will has become the compass by which the royal future is being navigated. And it is Prince George, not Charles, not William, who stands at the centre of that quiet storm. Behind the walls of palatial grace, however, unease simmers. A generational divide has deepened, not in public confrontation, but in cold silences and unspoken defiance. Charles, still clinging to the order he waited a lifetime to inherit, finds himself emotionally adrift. His distance from William grows, not out of anger, but a sense of quiet defeat. William, by contrast, has become more guarded, more deliberate. not just as a prince or a future king, but as a father. Every decision he makes now weighs George's emotional readiness against the institution's ruthless demands. He knows the burden isn't just ceremonial, it's spiritual. And with each day, he watches his son step closer to a destiny few understand, but all will eventually see unfold. Outside the palace, the public's reaction has been nothing short of electric. Some are awestruck, seeing in George a reincarnation of monarchy's purest form, unblemished, untarnished, untouched by scandal. Others are skeptical, even resentful. What does it mean that a child has been given the crown's most sacred sanctuary? What legacy does it imply about those who came before him? The divide is real. Across press rooms and drawing rooms alike, the conversation has changed. Balmoral is no longer just a retreat. It's a battleground for narrative, for symbolism, for future identity. And in the center of it all stands George, unaware of the full storm forming around him, yet slowly beginning to embody something deeper. His presence now commands more than ceremonial space. It symbolizes rebirth. To many, he is no longer simply an heir, but a guardian, a boy wrapped in silence who holds the keys to the monarchy's final refuge. As he grows, the questions will only sharpen. Will he conform? Will he defy? Will he lead from the throne or from the sanctuary his great-grandmother carved out for him in secrecy? This is not the end of the monarchy's story. It's the prelude to a transformation, one not written by Parliament or penned into the Constitution, but whispered into the pages of a letter, locked away beneath Windsor, and entrusted to a child destined to choose what kind of king he will become. The sanctuary has been passed down, and the crown may never be the same again. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.